Hi folks, Pastor Steve Herring. This is part 3 of a 4-part Bible study where we're looking at the origins of Christmas. In order to do that, we've had to take some time to study the origins of the Christian church, how it began and how it was gathered up in the various cities of the northeastern Mediterranean, going from Syria all the way up into Turkey and around into Greece, and then spreading westward, and then spreading throughout Europe into the early Middle Ages. Now, the last part, I began mentioning how the Christians, the Christian churches, and let's use a plural for Christian churches, because the Christian church was by no means organized as any kind of unified whole. The Christian church had a lot of diversity from the Eastern Orthodox churches, down even in North Africa. There were Ethiopic churches that were organized, Ethiopic Orthodox churches in Ethiopia, very well organized, but very culturally different from churches elsewhere in the former Roman Empire. Everywhere the church went, the church borrowed holidays, holy days, from the traditions of the people where they went. And those holy days include Christmas and Easter. Now, one quick observance we need to make is that you will not find a Christian church that was not profoundly influenced by the surrounding cultures wherever it came to be. Judea was destroyed completely by the Romans, okay? The whole area of what would be Samaria and Judea, what is now Israel, the Romans just wiped out virtually everything there, and they sent the people into exile as slaves. Some of those people brought their Jewish faith with them, and so you had Jews spread throughout the Roman Empire. Some of those people brought their early Christian faith with them, and they would have affiliated themselves with the missionary churches, which would rapidly develop at the end when the apostolic age was over. The Christian apostles, as far as I can tell, most of them were killed either in the Jewish war or in the early Roman persecutions. Paul and John being the two primary apostles whose work led to the spread of the Christian church. Now, the borrowing. So, in other words, the reason I'm saying this is that we make a mistake, in my opinion, a terrible mistake, if we exclude holidays from Christian celebrations such as Easter or Christmas in the hope of finding some kind of pure New Testament church. There was no such thing. Those churches from day one were very localized and very much influenced by the surrounding culture of the places where they were established. So there is no historic reason to exclude any of those observances. And I think this is very important as we begin to look at Christmas and how Christmas came to be established. The European church, the church, there was an Eastern and a Western church. The two split, and they rapidly came to have less and less to do with one another. You had an Eastern Orthodox church, and the Eastern Orthodox church came to be very culturally immersed in the local culture of those Eastern countries. Over time, as the Christian message spread, you ended up with a Russian Orthodox Church. You had various Eastern Orthodox churches that would be like a Greek Orthodox Church, a Syrian Orthodox Church, a Lebanese Orthodox Church, an Egyptian Orthodox Church, an Ethiopic Orthodox Church. And those Orthodox churches were run by the patriarchs of the local areas where they were established, and their observation of Christmas was completely caught up in that. So they were not following the Roman calendar of the Roman Church, which came to be known as the Roman Catholic Church. Now, that Roman Catholic Church would be finding increasing numbers of converts in Britain, in Scotland, in Ireland, in Scandinavia, in Denmark, in all of those areas of Northern Europe, Germany, Bavaria. And in the northern areas, they had to borrow the traditions of the people because of the cultural influence where they were. One of those cultural influences was the celebration of Yule. Yule, the festival of the winter solstice. You'll see, everything was deeply seasonal in those cultures. Deeply seasonal by virtue of the farming that went on, by virtue of the whole way of life. Winter was horrifically cold and dark. Cold and dark. Short days, cold weather. The people celebrated at the darkest, longest night of the year, Yule. They celebrated by having a great fire. They burned a Yule log, which was a log cut and brought into the fireplace to burn all night long until morning. They brought in trees, evergreen trees, cut one down, bring it in, decorate it brightly with bits of cloth and whatever they had. They feasted on whatever delicacies they could create. They drank mead or whatever they had. They celebrated this festival of the returning sun, basically. And this goes back to their ancient pagan roots. This festival came to be subsumed into all of the Northern European celebrations of the Christ Mass, the Christmas, the birth of Christ. The story of the birth of Jesus, as I read it from Matthew and from Luke, those celebrations were what was the formation, that's what the Christmas was formed around. They had the celebration of the feasting, the decoration, the singing of the Yule carols, Yuletide carols. Now, that was the celebration of Christmas in Northern Europe. Now the question comes, what became of Northern Europe? This is a good point for us to pause and understand, where did our ancestors come from? It would be a very interesting question for me if I could get any question in the world answered. When did our ancestors, I'm talking about your family and my family, ancestors, first become Christians? Probably in the Middle Ages, probably 600, 700, 800 in the Common Era, as as I mentioned previously, you had all these warring tribes that were fighting with each other, and the Christian church pervaded them all. The Christian missionaries came to be accepted even if this king was fighting that king, and this ruler was fighting that ruler. The Christian missionaries continued to do their work. The Christian church was able to make its way through. Now, coming into the later Middle Ages, the Mediterranean church, the southern church of Rome in Italy, started becoming very, very corrupt. It became corrupt because those southern kingdoms were very wealthy. The wealth was a corrupting influence, and the church governed and ruled in a great way. You see, the church was the common thread that held all the warring kings together. And so the church started holding more and more and more wealth and political power. So the southern church, coming into the late Middle Ages, let's say 1400, in that period, late Middle Ages, early Renaissance, Italy is having this incredible economic and cultural boom time of artistic endeavor and wealth and all of this stuff happening, and the church is becoming very powerful over the city-states and kings of the whole of southern Europe. But up north, you're getting a different way of seeing things, and so you're starting to get a little bit of a split. So I'm going to go on in part 4, and we're going to continue to discuss a little bit the origins of Christmas.